I don't care who the story says I'm supposed to love, Adrian Blackwood said, and every candle in the ballroom went out at once. 100 guests fell silent as he crossed the marble floor, walked past Claire Morgan, and stopped in front of me. Me, Noah Bennett, the man this world had labeled its villain. Adrian took my hand like it was the only honest thing left in the room. I choose you. The chandeliers above us flickered. Thin cracks of white light raced across the ceiling, and pages began falling from nowhere, drifting around us like snow. Words burned across them before turning to ash. Villain. Heroine. Male lead. Ending. Then a voice filled the ballroom, calm and merciless. Narrative deviation confirmed. Noah Bennett will now be removed. Adrian's fingers tightened around mine. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But my first thought was embarrassingly simple. This was exactly why I had spent the last month trying to make him fall in love with someone else. 30 days earlier, I woke up holding a glass of red wine over Claire Morgan's white dress. The ballroom looked almost the same, only brighter, louder, and significantly less interested in erasing me from existence. Claire stared at me with wide blue eyes. Around us, wealthy strangers waited with the eager expressions of people who had paid good money to watch someone else's humiliation. My hand was tilted. One small movement, and the wine would spill. I knew this scene. I had edited this scene. 3 nights ago, back in my very normal apartment in Chicago, I had been reading a fantasy romance called The Duke's Devoted Heart. Noah Bennett, the jealous villain, ruined Claire's dress at the spring gala, tormented her for several chapters, and eventually met a dramatic end after challenging Adrian Blackwood. Now I was Noah Bennett. That felt unfair. I had never challenged anyone in my life unless online customer service counted. Are you going to pour that on me? Claire asked quietly. Absolutely not. I set the glass on the nearest tray so quickly the waiter nearly dropped it. A pale blue window appeared in front of my face. No one else reacted. Role assigned, villain. Primary objective. Preserve the original romance. Expected outcome, death in 30 days. I read it twice. Then a third time, because apparently panic made me optimistic about typos. There were none. Across the ballroom, Adrian Blackwood stood beneath a gold archway, tall, dark-haired, and composed enough to make everyone else look unfinished. In the book, this was the moment he first noticed Claire. Instead, his gray-blue eyes settled on me. A second message appeared. Warning. The male lead has deviated from his first cue. Adrian started walking in my direction. Claire glanced between us. Do you know him? Unfortunately. I whispered, though we had never met. Adrian stopped close enough that I caught the clean scent of cedar and winter air. His gaze moved from the untouched wine to Claire's spotless dress, then back to me. You changed your mind, he said. It was not a question. I smiled with the calm dignity of a man whose future had just been reduced to 30 days. I'm trying something new. Adrian's expression softened by half an inch. Somehow that was worse. So am I, he said. Before I could ask what Adrian meant, the blue window in front of me flashed so brightly that I nearly walked into a marble column. New objective. Restore the original romance. Beneath it, 3 smaller instructions appeared. Protect the heroine. Encourage emotional proximity. Do not attract the male lead. I looked at Adrian, who was still watching me as though I had become the evening's most interesting mystery, and decided the system had a cruel sense of humor. Lord Blackwood, Claire said, offering him a polite smile. I hope you are enjoying the gala. This was perfect. In the novel, Adrian was supposed to notice her kindness, admire her courage, and begin the slow emotional journey that sold several million copies. All I needed to do was leave. I took one careful step backward. Adrian took one step forward. You did not answer me, he said. About trying something new? I laughed lightly, the way people laugh before moving to another country under an assumed name. I have recently developed an interest in personal growth. Claire raised an eyebrow. Adrian looked almost amused. The system chimed. Male lead interest in heroine, 0. Male lead curiosity toward villain, increasing. I excused myself and escaped onto the balcony, where the cool spring air met my face like good advice. This is a disaster, I whispered. A remarkably efficient one, a small voice answered. I turned and found a woman sitting on the stone railing, no taller than a house cat, glowing pale blue from her silver hair to her tiny boots. I am Ivy, she said. Narrative guide, continuity manager, an unwilling witness to your poor decision-making. I have been here for 10 minutes. You are progressing quickly. Ivy explained that I had 30 days to preserve the central romance. If Adrian and Claire reached the winter announcement without falling in love, the world would begin correcting every deviation. She did not explain what correcting meant, and her expression suggested I would sleep better without knowing. So I created a plan. First, I would never mistreat Claire. Second, I would place her near Adrian at every reasonable opportunity. Third, I would leave the capital before the story remembered it wanted me gone. The next morning, I visited Claire at the Morgan estate. She opened the door herself and stared at the flowers in my hands. Are those an apology? Yes. For something you almost did? I believe in preventive accountability. She let me inside, although she watched me as if I might be 3 raccoons wearing a tailored coat. By noon, I had convinced her to attend a charity dance with Adrian that evening. By 8 o'clock, the ballroom orchestra began playing the exact waltz that started their romance in the book. I guided Claire toward Adrian, proud enough to forgive the universe for several recent offenses. Then Claire caught her heel on the edge of the carpet and winced. I cannot dance on this ankle, she said. Adrian offered his arm, but she shook her head and looked directly at me. You arranged this. You fix it. Moments later, my hand was in Adrian's, his other palm resting carefully against my back as we moved beneath the chandeliers. You keep placing yourself in my path, he murmured. This is the opposite of what I am doing. His mouth curved into the smallest smile. The blue window appeared over his shoulder. Hidden romance route unlocked. Target, Noah Bennett. I missed a step. Adrian steadied me without looking away. Careful, he said softly. I would hate to lose you before I understand you. By the time the waltz ended, I had learned 3 important things. Adrian danced perfectly. He noticed every time I tried to escape, and the hidden romance route had no visible button marked cancel. The next morning, I began Operation Make Adrian Notice Claire, a name that Ivy called both obvious and doomed. My first plan involved afternoon tea in the rose garden. Claire wore pale yellow. Adrian arrived exactly on time, and I placed them beneath an arch covered in white blossoms. It looked so romantic that even the birds seemed professionally arranged. Then Claire received an urgent message from her mother and left after 6 minutes. I stood to follow her. Adrian calmly poured me another cup. Leaving already? He asked. Yes. You were supposed to spend the afternoon with Claire. I was invited by you. He pushed the cup toward me. Sit. The system chimed. Male lead interest in heroine, 0. Male lead preference for Noah's company, increasing. I sat because apparently preserving the world required accepting tea from an attractive man who treated instructions like decorative suggestions. My second plan was a walk through the royal greenhouse. Claire was supposed to admire the rare orchids while Adrian revealed his secret love of botany. Instead, a spring storm arrived early, pounding against the glass roof while Claire remembered another appointment that she had somehow forgotten until the exact moment thunder rolled overhead. She is doing this on purpose, I muttered as the door closed behind her. She is not subtle, Adrian agreed. We stood beneath a canopy of flowering vines while rain blurred the gardens beyond the glass. A drop of water had fallen onto Adrian's dark hair when he entered. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed it away. My fingers stopped near his temple. So did my ability to breathe normally. Adrian's eyes lowered to mine. The entire greenhouse seemed to hold its breath with me. I pulled my hand back so quickly that I nearly knocked over a fern. There was water on you. A dangerous situation, he said. You are welcome. His smile followed me home. My third plan involved horses, open countryside, and enough distance between Adrian and me to restore common sense. Claire claimed she loved riding. The book had clearly lied. 10 minutes after we left the estate, she announced that her saddle felt uncomfortable and returned with a groom. I tried to continue alone, determined to give Adrian time to appreciate the landscape and possibly imagine Claire in it. My horse stepped into a shallow patch of mud, and I slipped sideways with all the dignity of a dropped sack of flour. Adrian caught my arm before I reached the ground. You arrange remarkably dangerous dates, he said. They are not dates. That is disappointing. He rode beside me for the rest of the afternoon, close enough that our sleeves brushed whenever the trail narrowed. The system remained suspiciously silent. My final plan was foolproof. Claire would send Adrian a sincere letter describing her hopes, fears, and admiration for his character. Unfortunately, Claire hated writing emotional letters. "You understand him better," she said, placing the paper in front of me. "Write something convincing." I spent an hour choosing every word. I wrote about loneliness hidden beneath responsibility, kindness concealed by silence, and the strange comfort of being understood without explanation. When Adrian received it, he requested my presence in the library. The letter rested open on the desk between us. "Beautiful," I said. "Claire has surprising depth." Adrian studied the page, then looked at my ink-stained fingers. "She also appears to have your handwriting." My heart stopped. He lifted the letter carefully. "Tell me, Noah, are these words truly hers?" For one terrible second, I considered blaming the handwriting on a shared tutor, a family curse, or an unusually ambitious ghost. Adrian waited. He had the patience of a man who already knew the truth and wanted to see how creatively I would embarrass myself. "Claire gave me the ideas," I said. "I merely arranged them into sentences." "Did she tell you that responsibility can become a kind of loneliness?" "In spirit." "Did she tell you that silence can hide kindness?" "Very poetically." Adrian folded the letter once, his gray-blue eyes never leaving mine. "You are a poor liar, Noah." "That is comforting. I was worried I had hidden talents." He stepped around the desk, close enough that the scent of cedar reached me. "Who were you thinking about when you wrote this?" The blue system window appeared between us. Warning: emotional proximity exceeding safe limits. I backed toward the door. Literacy. Then I escaped. Claire was waiting in my carriage when I reached the front steps. She sat with her arms folded, looking less like a heroine and more like a judge preparing a very efficient sentence. "You wrote him a love letter in my name," she said. "It was not a love letter. You described his soul. That was strategic matchmaking. You also stared at him through an entire dance." I was monitoring progress. Claire leaned forward. "Noah, I do not love Adrian." My thoughts stopped so abruptly that I could almost hear them collide. "You are supposed to." "According to whom?" Ivy appeared beside the window and pointed frantically at the invisible system instructions. I ignored her, which made her kick the carriage wall with a boot smaller than my thumb. Claire sighed. "Adrian is honorable, intelligent, and entirely uninterested in me. Every time you arrange a meeting, he watches the door until you arrive. When you speak to another man, he becomes so quiet that the room feels 10 degrees colder. I am not your romantic rival. There is no romance. Then you are the last person in the capital to notice it." By sunset, Claire had forced the truth from me. I told her about the novel, the 30-day deadline, and the world's insistence that she marry a man she did not want. She accepted the existence of a magical narrative system with disturbing ease. "That explains why my mother keeps ordering wedding flowers," she said. "I have canceled them 4 times. Ivy finally revealed herself to Claire, and after several minutes of shouting from both of them, we formed an alliance. Our first destination was the restricted archive beneath the Royal Library. We searched until midnight through dusty records, abandoned drafts, and books that whispered incorrect endings when opened. Claire discovered a narrow compartment behind a shelf. Inside lay a single burned page from an earlier version of the story. Only one sentence remained readable. Adrian Blackwood's greatest weakness was never Claire Morgan. The words after that had been scorched away. I traced the blackened edge, feeling an odd ache beneath my ribs. "Someone removed the name," Claire whispered. A familiar voice came from the darkness behind us. "Would you like to know what it was?" Adrian stepped into the candlelight, his gaze settling on me. "Because I think you already do." Claire looked from Adrian to me, then quietly stepped away with the burned page in her hand. Ivy followed her, muttering that privacy was apparently more important than preventing narrative collapse. I wanted to call them back. I also wanted to disappear behind the nearest shelf and live there permanently. Adrian did not give me either option. He turned and walked toward the narrow staircase at the rear of the archive. "Come with me," he said. "That depends entirely on where you are going. Somewhere you cannot escape through a convenient side door. I dislike how well you know me." He led me through the sleeping library, up a spiral staircase, and into the abandoned observatory above the western tower. Moonlight spilled through the glass ceiling, silvering the brass instruments and the dust floating between us. The city stretched below, quiet and distant, while the stars looked close enough to touch. Adrian stopped beside an old telescope. The missing name was yours, he said. My stomach tightened. You cannot know that. I know what I feel. Feelings are unreliable. People mistake hunger for destiny all the time. And you mistake fear for logic. That landed too close to the truth. I turned toward the window. You were supposed to notice Claire at the gala. I noticed you. Because I behaved strangely. You have always behaved strangely. I looked back at him. Adrian's expression had lost its usual calm distance. Before the gala, he continued, you were cruel when people watched and quiet when they did not. You made yourself impossible to like, but sometimes you looked at the door as though you were waiting for someone to let you leave. The words settled softly, and somehow that made them harder to bear. He had seen the old Noah, not the villain described in the book, but the frightened person hidden underneath. You did not even know me, I said. I wanted to. Adrian stepped closer. Then you changed. You apologized to Claire. You started protecting people you once ignored. You filled every room with terrible plans and worse excuses. My plans are improving. Your last plan involved writing me a letter and pretending another person understood me. His voice softened. But it was you. It has always been you. The distance between us became very small. I could hear the quiet rhythm of his breathing. His hand lifted, hesitated, then rested lightly against my cheek. The touch was careful, almost questioning. My thoughts scattered in every direction at once. Adrian leaned closer. For one suspended second, the whole world seemed to wait. Then pain flashed beneath my ribs, sharp and sudden enough to steal my breath. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table. The observatory lights flickered. Red words burned across my vision. Critical deviation detected. Romantic contact prohibited. Adrian reached for me. Noah, what happened? Nothing. The lie came out thin. Another message appeared. Correction required within 48 hours. Villain must betray the male lead. Failure will result in immediate removal. I stared at the words until they blurred. Adrian touched my arm, his concern open now. Tell me the truth. I forced myself to smile. You were right about one thing. What? I stepped away from him, even though every part of me wanted to stay. Fear does make people logical. For the next 48 hours, I became the version of Noah Bennett everyone expected. It was surprisingly easy. I stopped smiling at servants. I canceled Claire's invitations. I returned Adrian's letters unopened, although I read each one first and hated myself for every line. By the morning of the Duke's Council reception, the system had stopped flashing warnings and started displaying a cheerful countdown. Betrayal event approaching. Time remaining, 3 hours. Ivy hovered beside my mirror while I adjusted a black coat that made me look exactly like a man who collected grudges as a hobby. You could tell him the truth, she said, and let the system erase me in front of him. He would rather know. He would try to stop it. Yes, that is the problem. The reception filled Blackwood Hall with nobles, ministers, and enough polished silver to reflect every poor decision I had ever made. Adrian stood near the fireplace, speaking with Claire. His gaze found me immediately. Hope crossed his face before he could hide it. That nearly ruined everything. I forced myself to walk toward him with a smile that felt borrowed from someone crueler. Lord Blackwood, I said loudly enough for the room to hear. I believe you owe me an explanation. Conversation faded around us. Adrian's eyes narrowed. For what? I placed several documents on the nearest table. They were forged agreements suggesting I had encouraged his interest only to gain influence over his estate. Claire had helped create them, then spent an hour telling me she hated this plan. I thought you understood, I said. Every invitation, every private conversation, every carefully written letter was useful. You were useful. The words tasted like ash. Adrian looked down at the papers, then back at me. He did not raise his voice. Somehow that was worse. You expect me to believe this? I expect you to accept it. No, one word. Calm. Certain. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Say it again. My heart stumbled. There is nothing more to say. There is. His gaze searched mine. Tell me you felt nothing in the observatory. Tell me you never meant the letter. Tell me I imagined every moment between us. The system flashed red at the edge of my vision. Complete the betrayal. I looked past him at the chandeliers, the windows, anything but his face. You imagined it. Silence stretched between us. Adrian's expression changed slowly, hope giving way to something quieter and more painful. Look at me, he said. I could not. His voice softened. Noah, look at me and say it. If I met his eyes, I would confess everything. I would tell him about the countdown, the warnings, and the terror of disappearing while his hand was reaching for mine. So I stared at the floor. I used you. Adrian waited 1 second longer, as though offering me a final door back to him. Then he stepped away. Very well, he said. He left the hall without another word. The blue window appeared. Betrayal complete. Hidden romance route terminated. I waited for relief. I waited to wake in Chicago. Nothing happened. The chandeliers still glowed. The guests still whispered. My chest still felt hollow. Ivy landed on my shoulder, unusually silent. Then a final message appeared. Return condition denied. Subject no longer belongs to original world. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I had broken Adrian's heart to save us both, and the story had never planned to let me leave. Claire disappeared before sunrise. Her room was empty, her carriage untouched, and a single black envelope waited on her desk with my name written across it in silver ink. Inside was a note from Victor Hale, Adrian's oldest friend and the one man in the capital who had always treated me with perfect, polished indifference. He invited me to the abandoned winter conservatory outside the city and warned me to come alone if I wanted Claire returned safely. I read the message twice. Then I read it a third time because apparently betrayal had not cured me of making terrible decisions. Ivy circled the envelope, her blue glow flickering. This is not part of the published story. Neither am I, according to the system. Noah, something is wrong. That has been true since I woke up holding wine over Claire's dress. I left before anyone could stop me. The conservatory stood 6 miles beyond the capital, hidden behind bare trees and a garden frozen out of season. Inside, every glass wall was covered with handwritten pages. Thousands of them. Different versions of the same ballroom, the same names, the same ending. Claire sat near the center beneath a glowing circle of silver light. She was frightened but unharmed. Victor stood beside her, dressed in white as though he had arrived to save the day instead of ruin it. You came, he said. You kidnapped the heroine. Borrowed, Claire corrected coldly. He has been explaining himself for an hour. Victor smiled. She is difficult in every version. My stomach turned. Every version? He touched one of the pages on the wall. The words changed beneath his fingers. I saw Adrian choosing Claire. Then Adrian choosing no one. Then Adrian standing beside me in a field of snow. The image vanished before I could breathe. This world has repeated itself more times than you can remember, Victor said. Each time, Adrian refused the ending I gave him. You gave him. The original story was unstable. Adrian loved the wrong person. Claire rejected the role of devoted bride. You disrupted every path placed before you. Claire lifted her chin. That sounds less like instability and more like free will. Victor ignored her. So I corrected the narrative. I made Claire the heroine. I made you the villain. I removed the parts of you Adrian could love. Ivy went completely still beside me. No, she whispered. Victor looked at her with recognition. And yet some memories survived. My pulse slowed. Not from calm. From understanding. Ivy began to flicker, her small face filling with grief that did not belong to a magical guide. I am not the system, she said. Her voice trembled. I am you. The conservatory seemed to tilt. Ivy touched my forehead, and memories rushed through me like light through broken glass. Adrian laughing beneath summer rain. Adrian finding me in the library. Adrian holding my hand at the winter ball. Again, again, again. Every lifetime ended with the world resetting the moment he chose me. Every time, my memories were taken. Every time, a fragment remained behind to guide the next version of myself. You were never transported here, Victor said. Chicago was a memory I constructed to make you easier to control. I stared at the pages surrounding us. My apartment. My job. The novel I thought I had edited. All of it had been a cage disguised as another life. Claire stepped out of the silver circle as Ivy weakened it from within. Noah, she said softly. You did not steal Adrian from the story. I looked at the page nearest me. Beneath the burned sentence, the missing words slowly returned. Adrian Blackwood's greatest weakness was never Claire Morgan. It was Noah Bennett, in every life, in every ending. Victor's smile faded. Now you understand why he must forget you. A door opened behind us. Adrian's voice crossed the frozen room, calm and certain. That will not happen again. Adrian stood in the open doorway with snow silvering the shoulders of his dark coat. He looked tired, furious, and completely certain, which was impressive considering I had publicly broken his heart less than a day earlier. Victor turned toward him. "You should not be here." "I have heard that before," Adrian said. His gaze found mine across the conservatory, and the anger in his face softened into something far more difficult to survive. Relief. "You left without telling anyone. I was invited to a private kidnapping. You could have declined." The note was very persuasive. Claire made an offended sound. "Could both of you save the emotional reunion until after we escaped the magical prison?" Adrian walked toward me without looking at Victor again. The pages along the walls began whispering, repeating every cruel word I had said at the reception. Useful. Imagined. Nothing. Adrian stopped inches away. Were any of those words true? I stared at him. The system would have removed me. That was not my question. I was trying to protect you, by deciding what I could endure without asking me. His voice remained calm, but every word reached the part of me that had spent countless lives running from him. "You do not get to choose my feelings for me, Noah. I thought losing me would hurt less than watching me disappear. You were wrong." His hand closed gently around mine. Warm, steady, familiar in ways my restored memories had not yet learned to explain. "I would rather face the truth beside you than live safely inside a lie." The blue system window appeared between us. Final correction available. Return to constructed world and forget all narrative subjects. Alternative, remain. And forfeit system protection. I almost laughed. Chicago waited behind the first choice. My apartment. My job. A life designed to keep me lonely enough to be manageable. The second choice offered no guarantees. No script. No promised ending. Just Adrian's hand around mine, and Claire arguing with Ivy about how to dismantle a glowing circle without ruining her shoes. "Victor," Claire called, studying the silver mechanism beneath the floor. "You made one serious mistake." He frowned. "Only one. You wrote me as the heroine, then assumed I would wait for a man to rescue me." She pressed both palms against the central symbol. Ivy added her light to Claire's, and the circle began fading from silver to white. The pages on the walls fluttered wildly, but no one was harmed. Instead, sentences peeled away from the glass. Claire must obey. Adrian must forget. Noah must leave. One by one, the words vanished. Victor reached for the control book on the pedestal, but Adrian calmly placed his hand over its cover. "No more revisions," he said. "You cannot maintain this world without my structure," Victor warned. "Perhaps it does not need maintaining," Claire replied. "Perhaps it needs living." The system window flashed again. Decision required. Adrian did not ask what I would choose. He simply waited, giving me what the story never had. Freedom. I looked at Ivy, who was growing more transparent as the false narrative weakened. She smiled through her tears. "We have gone back enough times," she said. "Let us finally move forward." I touched the second option. The window dissolved into thousands of tiny lights. The conservatory brightened as every locked page turned blank. Victor stared around him, suddenly powerless, no longer an author, only another person inside the world he had tried to control. Adrian lifted my hand between us. "Are you staying?" "Apparently, I have developed an interest in personal growth." His smile returned, small and real. "That is fortunate." "Why?" "Because tomorrow night is the winter announcement, and I intend to make a choice the entire capital will remember." The winter ballroom looked exactly as it had in every memory and nothing like it had before. Gold chandeliers glowed above a sea of silk, crystal, and carefully concealed gossip. Claire stood beside Adrian beneath the ceremonial arch, wearing silver instead of bridal white and looking more relieved than romantic. I remained near the edge of the room, where villains, former villains, and men reconsidering every life choice naturally belonged. Victor stood under guard near the council doors, no longer controlling the story, only waiting to answer for the lies he had built into it. Ivy hovered beside my shoulder, almost transparent now. "You could still leave through that window," she whispered. "It is 3 stories above the garden. You have considered worse plans." Before I could defend my excellent history of survival, the royal announcer called for silence. According to tradition, Adrian was expected to name Claire as his future duchess. The old narrative still lingered in the room like a song everyone knew but no one had chosen. Adrian stepped forward. Claire offered him her hand. He took it gently, bowed, and said, "Lady Claire Morgan will not be my bride." A collective gasp moved through the ballroom with the efficiency of professional theater. Claire smiled. "Thank you." Then Adrian walked past her, straight toward me. My heart began behaving like it had been given separate instructions from the rest of my body. Pages appeared above the chandeliers, falling slowly through the air. Some carried lines from our earlier lives. Some were blank. Adrian stopped in front of me and held out his hand. "I was told my duty was to love the person chosen for me," he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "But duty without choice is only another kind of prison." The system returned one final time, its blue light trembling between us. Original ending available. Accept Claire Morgan. Restore order. Adrian did not look at it. He looked at me. "I do not care who the story says I am supposed to love," he said. "I choose you." The ballroom lights flickered. Fine cracks of white light crossed the ceiling. For one awful moment, I thought the world was resetting again. Then Ivy touched my temple. Every forgotten lifetime opened inside me. Adrian, finding me beneath summer rain. Adrian saving a seat beside him in the library. Adrian wading through every version of my fear. I remembered loving him before the system gave us names for what we were supposed to be. Ivy smiled, tears shining on her tiny face. "You do not need me anymore. I always needed you. You needed your memories." Her light spread through the falling pages, turning every command into blank paper. She faded softly, not disappearing so much as returning to the part of me from which she had been made. The cracks above us sealed. The system window dissolved. The world remained. Claire was the first to applaud. The rest of the room followed, uncertain at first, then louder, until the chandeliers seemed to ring with it. Adrian's hand was still waiting. This time, I took it without calculating the consequences. Months later, Claire became a royal advisor and immediately canceled every law involving arranged declarations of love. Victor was removed from the council and given enough quiet time to discover that people were not characters. Adrian and I began writing a new history of the kingdom together. We left the first page blank on purpose. On the night of the first snow, we stood on the observatory balcony while white flakes drifted over the city. Adrian rested his forehead lightly against mine. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Several. Most involve horses and forged love letters." "And me?" I looked at the man I had spent 30 days trying to place in someone else's ending, the man who had spent lifetimes finding his way back into mine. "Never you," I said.